Shonen Jump has a big problem it needs to face. With the world growing ever more inclusive, so too do the mediums that we enjoy need to grow with it. I'm not going to lie, this video started out as a way to praise Akane Banashi, and I think elements of that are still very much present within the video. After all, I did read all 40 chapters in about 3 days. But I think I would be doing the changes that are happening to Shonen Jump a disservice by only talking about Akane Banashi, even though I do firmly believe it, along with the likes of Sakamoto Days, are bringing about an irreversible change. So I'd like to pose 2 questions. Where does that leave Shonen Jump? And why should Shonen Jump change? I'm not so blind as to believe that they're the first to break away from the traditional mold of what we think about when it comes to Shonen Jump. Dr. Stone, Blue Box, and even early Mashle being excellent examples of that. Battle, and to a lesser extent, sports shonen have always been a staple of the demographic. And while yes, it can easily be argued that Sakamoto Days falls within the realms of the first, I still can't help but feel that it has a different presence to its execution that I think most other battle series lack. Sakamoto Days is a battle series at its core, but that isn't really what drives it. It's more so a force that acts as a vehicle to propel the real story forward. With other battle series, it always comes with the idea that the main protagonist wants to achieve something, whether that be a title like Hokage or Pirate King, or of uncovering some truth like with Undead Unluck. Whatever the reason, that goal is usually only achievable through acts of force. And while Sakamoto Days does share some of those similarities, I don't really think those are the reasons why he fights. Sakamoto would be more than happy to put up his proverbial hat as an assassin and be a store manager, content to live out the rest of his life with his family and friends. Yes, he fights because it's necessary, but it's only out of necessity and not from a standpoint of wanting to achieve anything other than happiness. There are no further goals pushing his growth forward as a main character, and honestly I find that so refreshing. I can get behind the inspiration that other shonen try to provide of pushing your limits and growing, but there is something so comforting and powerful in just wanting to exist. To know already who you are and what you want. I think the difference I'm finding in it is the lack of the active attempt at progression, of finding the next big fight to get that much stronger. In that, I find the progression of the story actually feels more natural at times. Like it's a life anyone can live, but it's only through circumstance that you found yourself in that situation. Even as ridiculous as it is trying to find any common ground with a world-class assassin. Akane Banashi, in direct contrast to Sakamoto Days, is in the style of the more active battle series, but in a very nice twist has found its own battleground. That being Rakugo, a Japanese art of storytelling. It is very clear from the onset that this is a story of active progression, and Akane will stop at almost nothing to get there. Somehow, it's all the similarities to battle shonen that the nuanced differences actually defines itself so much more clearly. Just the fact that one of the biggest questions of the series is answered within the first 30 chapters, and I still feel like the story has barely begun. I knew this story was going to be something different. Something special. If not for everyone else, at least for myself. There's a sense of something magical about the way the characters carry themselves. Something that feels more human, more approachable than the over-the-top personalities of other shonen series. And I think that's a core part of what is different. I see myself more within some of the current lineup of Shonen Jump, despite them living wildly different lives. And I think at least a part of that feeling is shared by some of the other readers of the publication. I'll always enjoy the grand and magical tales brought to the table, but there is a real and growing portion of the fanbase that wants these more personable stories. So that brings us back to the question, what does that mean for Shonen Jump? Well, I feel like it's at the same time an easy answer and one that is wildly beyond anything I can offer. I know that's an entirely unsatisfactory answer. Why bring up the question if I don't have an answer? Well, because I think Shonen Jump has a real chance to broaden its appeal. I know that at the base level, shonen technically is a demographic within itself, but I think with the success of series that stray a bit further away from the normal fare, the question needs to at least be considered. So I think a more appropriate question wouldn't be why should Shonen Jump change, but rather, why shouldn't it? A wider pool of ideas to pull from is generally seen as a good thing. Innovation comes from looking at problems from new directions, or by realizing something is a problem in the first place. And I think until the last couple of years, these growing problems didn't really need to be addressed. Naruto and Bleach ending was the biggest point at which we've had to ask where that leaves Shonen Jump. But that was quickly answered with the likes of Dr. Stone, MHA, Black Clover, and even Demon Slayer. The only problem? Those series are nearly a decade old at this point, and even further is that 2 of them have concluded, and the other 2 are within their last major arcs. And to take it a step even further, possibly the biggest and most influential Shonen Jump series of all time is nearing its own natural conclusion. One Piece, a monolith 25 years in the making. Within the next year or 2, we're inevitably going to feel the holes that they leave. So it is my true hope that we see more series that buck the more traditional battle and sports-focused Shonen Jump entries. I think the scramble we've seen in the last year has been a pretty good indication that Shonen Jump has noticed the problem. That being said, I don't know if they've done enough to prepare for the loss that will readily be apparent in the not-too-distant future. Just as many series as we've seen come, we've seen an almost equal number end just as quickly. Instead, they've adopted a throw everything at the wall until something sticks approach, which I think is fine while they still have a few years of breathing room, but how long can that last? Now don't get me wrong, I'm by no means trying to say all is hopeless. I just want to bring up the question and recognize that these series have given us a glimpse of what Shonen Jump can be. In truth, I think there is more good than bad to be seen from these changes, but that it all comes down to how Shonen Jump chooses to approach this unique chance at growth and change. I'm hopeful for the future of Shonen Jump, but what are your thoughts? What steps, if any, do you think Shonen Jump needs to be taking? I'd love to read your thoughts in the comments, and if you haven't already, hit that like button and subscribe. I deeply appreciate it. And with that, have a great day, my dudes.